Hello Year 9. Today we are looking at multiplying and dividing surds, but before we get into it, I would just like to publicly announce that I have finally worked out how to match the colour of my pen to the highlighter I want to choose. It's taken me this long to finally work out how to do that. However, now I am so happy because I don't know if you can tell, but the colours match exactly now. These are the same colour, but they look a bit different. Anyway, so multiplying surds. We have looked at this before, and all it is we just multiply the numbers underneath the surd together. So here's our rule, which means if we've got the square root of 5 times the square root of 10, that's the same as just multiplying the numbers together to get the square root of 50. Now, we've done the reverse process to simplify our surds. However, we do not leave it as the square root of 50. We break it down if we can. So we can simplify this further to 25 and 2. Remember, you pick a number that is a square number to help us break it down. Something I probably should have pointed out to you last time we were simplifying surds is you want to pick the highest square number that as a factor, so then it fully simplifies. And I'll show you what I mean by that in the next example. So simplifying to 25 and 2, the square root of 25 is just 5 times the square root of 2. This is an example which will point out to you what I was talking about. So here we've got two surds multiplying together. Remember, you multiply the things that are the same. So that's why we multiply the 2 times the 3, because they're at the front of the surds. Then what we want to do is multiply the numbers underneath the surds together. So 2 times 3 becomes 6, and 2 times 24 becomes 48. Now, we do not leave it like this because we can simplify the square root of 48 further. Now, when you're picking your factors, I've used this example because 16 times 3 is 48, where 16 is a square number, and 4 times 12 is also 48, where 4 is a square number. However, look how quickly I get to the final answer by using the higher square number. So breaking this down, we get the square root of 16. I've realised I didn't finish this. We get the square root of 16 is 4, and then 4 times the square root of 3 is 4 square root 3. Whereas over here, if we use the 4 and the 12, that becomes 2, and then it's 2 square root 12. However, the square root of 12 can then be broken down into 4 and 3, which means we get the same answer. You just have to break this down twice. Whereas if you pick the highest number first, you get to the simplest answer the quickest. So in saying that, what I've just done here is I've broken down the square root of 48. However, I've forgotten about the 6. So underneath, you guys are going to hate this, but here we're going to have, so it becomes the 6 times the square root of 16 times the square root of 3. Okay, that's just the 48 broken down. The square root of 16 becomes 4 times the square root of 3. 6 times 4 is 24, square root 3. And that is our final answer. Okay, so that's multiplying. Dividing is a little bit different. So if you've got two surds that are dividing, what you want to do is put it into our fraction, because we know that division is like a fraction. So when we take the square root of two surds, what we can do, if you've got the square root on the top and the square root on the bottom, that's the exact same as taking the square root of the whole fraction. So I guess it's kind of like multiplying. So for example, square root of 54 divided by the negative square root of 2, we put it as a fraction, so the square root of 54 over the square root of 2, and remember the negative just comes out the front. Obviously, if they were both negatives, it would become a positive because a negative and a negative is a positive. However, just because one of them is negative, you just pull it out the front. It's the same as if only the 54 was negative, we can also just pull it out the front. So then we get this fraction here, which is exactly the same as taking the square root of 54 over 2. This inside simplifies to 27. And then we can further break it down. So the negative just stays out the front because remember, this is kind of like -1 times the square root of 27. It's like negative x is the same as -1 times x. So then we can break it down further into 3 and 9. The square root of 9 is just 3. We can't break down the square root of 3 any further. And because remember, these are all multiplying together. It's like -1 times the square root of 3 times 3. We collect the things that are the same. So the numbers on their own, -1 times 3 is -3. And then we just leave the square root of 3 on the end. Okay, here we've got our division's already been put into the fraction for us. So again, we've got numbers out the front and then we've got our surds. So remember, when we multiply fractions, it's the same as multiplying the top and multiplying the bottom together, which is why I have pulled them apart, okay? Because if these two fractions are multiplied, it's just the top times the top, which gives you this, and then the bottom times the bottom, which gives you that. However, I've pulled it apart so you can see that with the numbers, you divide them, okay? So that's 15 divided by 5 gives you 3. And then with our surds, you make it a fraction underneath the square root symbol. Simplifying it further, 32 divided by 8 is just 4. So we keep the surd symbol there. And then again, the square root of 4 simplifies down to just 2. So our final answer is 6. Okay, here's a completely different question with a multiplication and division combined. So this is what we're trying to simplify. The first thing you want to do is complete the multiplication on the top. So again, you want to keep the numbers out the front, multiply them together. So we get 5 times 4, and then the numbers underneath the surd, we also multiply them together. So we're going to get 20, 5 times 4 becomes 20, and then 2 times 12 is 24. Again, we can split them up, so you divide the whole numbers, so 20 divided by 10, and then you want to multiply that by, combine those two together, so you get the square root of 24 over 8. Simplifying it down, 20 divided by 10 is just 2, and then 24 divided by 8 is 3. Alrighty, good luck with your homework.